chefs de département, téléspectateurs et spectateurs, bienvenue. On va demander à M. Riopel de lire la vision.
Mr. President, our vision, Prescott-Russell will continue to be a community united by its traditions and cultures, working towards the prosperity of all its citizens. Prescott-Russell continuera d'être une communauté unie par ses traditions et ses cultures en marche vers la prospérité de tous ses citoyens.
Je vais passer maintenant à Land Acknowledgement. First Nations Land Acknowledgement. As we gather here today, we respectfully acknowledge the land on which we live and work in Prescott and Russell is located on the traditional and unceded territory of Anishinaabe people, including the Algonquin Nation. We furthermore acknowledge that the territory encompasses the traditional and treaty lands of the Haudenosaunee people, including the Mohawk Nation. We gratefully acknowledge these First Nations for their guardianship of this land, and we honor them. We are grateful for the past, present, and future contribution made by the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples in shaping and strengthening our communities. Vous pouvez vous asseoir. Merci. Je vais aller chercher mon... OK, on passe à l'item 3, qui est l'adaptation l'adaptation de l'ordre du jour. J'ai besoin d'un proposeur et un appuyeur. M. Riopel, M. Lefebvre. Qu'il soit résolu que l'ordre du jour soit adopté tel que présenté. Je suis en faveur. C'est adopté. Déclaration d'intérêt pécuniaire. Est-ce qu'il y en a? Il n'y en a pas. Pétition, délégation, numéro 5. 5.1, Brian Wilson, Ville de Hawkesbury, budget de répartition des incendies 2026 et directive pour mettre à jour l'entente de répartition des incendies. Je vais vous lire la résolution plus tard. Allez-y, M. Wilson.
Merci, Mr. Warden. Members of Council, thanks for having me here to speak to you today. Some of you I know and some of you I don't, so enchanté for those that I have not yet met. I'm here today with a bit of an ask of Council. I know you're going into your 2026 budget deliberations. As you are aware, the town of Hawkesbury and the United Counties of Prescott-Russell have a working relationship in terms of providing fire dispatch services across the county. We are at a bit of a crossroads in terms of operating the dispatch center with a number of changes that are coming up, and we're at a point where we need to make a decision in terms of how we're going to continue to provide fire dispatch services across the county. Full disclosure, I was hired into the town of Hawkesbury a little over 6 months ago, and one of my first tasks was to give some serious consideration to what we are doing with the dispatch center because of these upcoming changes. The biggest one, and the one that is staring us in the face, is the transition to NG 911. So I've put together a report, and hopefully you've had a chance to go through it. I'm happy to answer questions, but I want to give you a bit of a context on where that's coming from, which is the transition to NG 911 is going to necessitate some changes in how we run fire dispatch in Hawkesbury. I recognize that the ask that we've put before council today is it's a significant budgetary ask moving forwards. The challenge is, and no shocker to those of you that know me, I'm an Anglophone. And so I came into Hawkesbury as an Anglo that speaks un petit peu de français. And for me, that's fine. I can have a discussion about what we're doing with our dispatch service. But Hawkesbury offers the province's only truly fully bilingual dispatch service, meaning that our dispatchers fluently transition back and forth between French and English routinely on both the radio in speaking with firefighters as well as callers that are calling in. There are times when our dispatchers have received calls from other emergency services agencies, including the OPP, because they lacked a French-speaking call taker at the OPP call center. And they're calling Hawkesbury to ask for assistance in translating the needs of whatever that caller's looking for. So, with that said, coming into Hawkesbury as the new chief and trying to figure out what we're going to do with dispatch left me with a bit of a dilemma. Do I propose that we throw in the towel and move to something else, or do I say we need to fight to keep a bilingual fire dispatch? And for me, I think we owe it to our residents. We live in a region that is proudly bilingual. We promote that we are bilingual. Hawkesbury certainly is very bilingual. And I think we have to recognize that if we don't support this and continue to back it, once it's gone, and we likely will never get it back. So that now presents a dilemma for me to come and speak to all of you as members of the United Counties and Prescott-Russell Council with an ask to help us get to the point where we can have a product that we are all proud of and that we can all stand behind and meets industry standards and best practices. The transition to NG 911 is going to, as I mentioned, necessitate a change in how we facilitate the dispatch center. Currently, we staff with one person. So we have a single dispatcher working 24 hours a day. If they need to use the washroom, I included the picture in your report for enlightened reading. But they are able to answer 911 calls while using their facilities. It's not ideal, but that's the current model that we're operating within the Hawkesbury Dispatch Center. As we transition into NG 911 and the transition away from traditional phone lines into a computerized call answering system, and the requirements to keep that in a secured environment, we won't be able to do that anymore. We will no longer be able to have these extra communications consoles floating around the fire station. That means that we're at a precipice in terms of how we look to staff our dispatch center in order to not only meet the needs of our residents, but meet the needs of the security requirements coming out of NG 911. Coupled with that is the industry standards. So the NFPA 1225 standard says that we should have 2 dispatchers per shift. That's been an ongoing struggle in a small dispatch center for a long time because of the cost associated with it. And that's no shocker to any of you sitting in here. I appreciate that you're all coming from your own municipalities and understand the cost implications of staffing. However, we're now at that point where our expected transition date to NG 911 is February of 2026. That means prior to February of 2026, we need to figure out what we're doing with the dispatch center. My recommendation to you and the recommendation in the report before you today is that we need to commit to upping our staffing to a minimum of 2 dispatchers per shift, which is an increase of 1. And having a dedicated dispatch supervisor to oversee those staff. If I backtrack any onboarding process, it takes us about 2 months to train and certify a dispatcher. So if I want them functioning in the dispatch center, we need to move forwards and get them hired on board starting January 2nd kind of thing. That means we need to start a recruiting process very, very soon if we're gonna get through and find some good candidates to staff that. So the ask before you today is a couple things. One is recognizing the proposed 2026 fire dispatch budget, which is already covered in the existing fire dispatch agreement between the town of Hawkesbury and the counties. But it means that the budget is going to be a little bit higher than what was previously presented to you. The second part of this is an ask that you give us permission and direction to move forwards with the staffing implications and the staff increase that is needed to meet the NG 911 security requirements and the NFPA 1225 standards. Like I say, I think we owe it to our residents, we owe it to a bilingual counties to get us to where we need to be. The struggle I've been faced with, and I think that we all recognize, the town of Hawkesbury is an equal player in this. We have skin in the game as well. We recognize that the costs associated with moving to this staffing model are significant. The challenge is, right now, I'm not in a position to go out and market and try and bring new dispatch clients on board, not knowing what the future of the dispatch center is going to be. In order for me to go out and find new fire department clients that would come into the dispatch center and help share the cost to all of us, I need to have a model that is sustainable, that meets industry standards, and that we can all stand behind and be proud of. So what I need is the horse in front of the cart here, if I can use that English analogy, to get us to where we need to be, to staff this appropriately with trained and certified dispatchers that meet all of the industry standards, so that as we move forwards into 2026 and we begin to open up and look at the dispatch service agreement, we can have a discussion about how we attract and retain new dispatch clients to help share this cost between all of us and bring the cost down to something that is reasonable for everyone. That's the ask before you today. I am certainly more than happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wilson. Thank you for your report and your presentation. Je vais lire la résolution en français, si c'est correct. Oui. De la passer aux résolutions avant, lire la résolution avant. Oh, avez-vous des questions? Allez-y. C'était pour lire la résolution avant.
Non, Monsieur le Président, pour être capable de discuter du dossier, il faut lire la résolution avant. OK.
Qu'il soit résolu que le Conseil des comtés unis de Prescott-Russell, 1, reçoive le rapport 2025-RC-56 présenté par le directeur de la sécurité publique, chef du service des incendies de la ville de Hawkesbury. 2, autorise la ville de Hawkesbury à entamer les processus d'augmentation du personnel de répartition afin de respecter les normes NG 911. 3, approuve que le nouveau budget prévisionnel de la répartition incendie pour 2026 totalise 1 191 200 $, représentant une augmentation de 578 402 $ par rapport aux frais contractuels dans la 4e prolongation de l'entente de service de répartition d'incendie, soit inclus dans le budget 2026 des comtés unis de Prescott-Russell. Et 4, donne instruction à l'administration des comtés unis de Prescott-Russell d'identifier le processus de révision de l'entente de service de répartition incendie avec l'administration de la ville de Hawkesbury et qu'un rapport soit présenté au Conseil en 2026 pour discuter des plans futurs relatifs à la répartition incendie. J'ai besoin d'un proposeur et d'un appuyeur pour discussion. M. Zant, M. Rio, M. Tarnowski est proposé. Question, commentaire. Allez-y, M. Zant.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Thank you, Chief Wilson. Who pays for these services everywhere else in Canada? Are all municipalities on the hook for their 911 dispatch service?
Through the
Mr.
warden to the question raised, yes, every municipal, so under the Fire Protection and Prevention Act, every municipal government, lower tier government, establishes their level of service for fire protection in the province. Some lower tier municipalities have regionalized that and pushed it to an upper tier level. There are a couple of examples of that across the province. But generally speaking, it's driven at a lower tier level. Included in fire protection services is the provision of dispatch. So in some cases, that is done by a municipal fire department. In some cases, that is contracted to someone else. There are third parties doing fire dispatch in the province, but it is the lower tier governments, the government responsible for providing their fire department, that need to figure out how they're going to dispatch those firefighters.
So there are $0 from the province on this.
Through the warden, correct. There's no dollars provided directly to fire dispatch on an operational level. If I may just add, Mr. Warden, the town of Hawkesbury has engaged in discussions with the Solicitor General's office seeking additional funding for this. We had a delegation at AMO that met with the Solicitor General and the Fire Marshal on this point. We are seeking to try and find additional funding. There's no funding provided for under the Solicitor General's office or the Office of the Fire Marshal for operational needs of fire departments. That said, there has been ongoing discussion with the Solicitor General's office about perhaps approaching the Ministry of Francophone Affairs to see if we may be able to elicit some funding on that regards. Again, we're continuing those discussions and trying to figure out how we can find a way to help fund this, in addition to some discussions with some neighboring departments and perhaps one municipality in this room that hopefully we can bring over to Hawkesbury.
Follow-up, Warden,
Go
please?
ahead.
Thank you for that, that answer. What's your current, I guess, timeline and strategy to bring on new clients? And how would that look?
Mr. Wilson?
Through the warden, ultimately, as soon as we can get our staffing model up and running with certified dispatchers, it gives us a product that we will be one of very few. Well, we'll be the only one in the province that offers an NFPA 1225 compliant bilingual fire dispatch service. That's very unique. Our expectation is, or with council's approval of the recommendation before you today, that we will be staffed with certified dispatchers meeting that threshold in and around February of 2026, which gives us the ability to move forwards with attracting new clients. It is worth noting that switching a dispatch service is not like turning a light switch on or off. It does take some time to move them over, to get the GIS data into the system, incorporate their dispatch procedures. So I don't expect that it's going to happen overnight, but it is something that we're looking to move towards in a planned way. I have money, an ask into my municipal council next year for a marketing program, like a trade show booth for dispatch, because Hawkesbury has previously never promoted its dispatch service in that venue, but there are private companies offering us a dispatch service that are. So we're looking to start that promotion next year, provided we have the staffing model and a dispatch service that we can all be proud of, that we can move forwards with and try and bring new clients on board.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Does that answer your question? Mayor Tarnowski?
Merci, Monsieur le Président. So first of all, I'm going to start by saying thank you very much for the support and services you're providing. I do have some questions for administration that may come across as me not supporting this, but please don't read that into it. I want to be as responsible as possible with our residents' funds. So first of all, this report, Mr. President, comes directly from the town of Hawkesbury, our service provider, not from United Counties administration. So I've got some concerns that council is being asked today to approve a provider's own budget and staffing increase without a county-led review. So I've got to struggle with that. Not that I wouldn't support it, but I would need counties to come with recommendations and analysis under that. I think that's a requirement under the Municipal Act, so I would start there. The other aspect, the fiscal impact of this obviously is a major one, but without any detailed breakdown or capital operating separation, I think the urgency of NG 911 doesn't remove our obligation for fiscal due diligence, so that's a challenge for me. Our current fire dispatch agreement runs till 2027, so approving budget and staffing changes now effectively amends that contract midterm and pre-commits funds outside that 2026 budget process. And again, in terms of the Municipal Act on budget adoption, I think that doesn't work for us. So I'm okay in receiving, so there were 4 asks here to receive the information, certainly agreed to that. Authorizing them to move ahead, I don't think that's even in our privy because they're a separate entity from us, so that to me is not something that I would be comfortable doing. And then the approved piece at this stage before budget discussions, again, is not something that I'm willing to entertain at this stage. So the way that the resolution is structured right now, I'm not comfortable and I will not vote for it. But again, I want to just underline that it's not because I'm not necessarily caring, or it's not because I don't care about bilingual service or the quality of the service or anything like that, just more on a procedural basis and the fact that budget discussions should all be put together. And one last point, Mr. President, if I may, for the fire chief, the NFPA standard that you're referring to in the documentation, is that one that's actually provincial regulation with the Ontario Fire Marshal, or is it like an aspirational standard? Because we know NFPA is not always a requirement as well, if I may.
Thank you, Mr. Tarnowski. Go ahead, Mr. Wilson.
Through the warden to the question raised, they're all very valid points. In terms of the NFPA standard, NFPA 1225 is not, there's no statutory requirement to meet the staffing regulations in NFPA 1225. However, there are now under mandatory certification, which we're all aware of, running our own fire departments, there is a requirement to meet the mandatory training certifications under 1225. So there is reference to the document, but not specifically to the staffing requirements in it. The staffing need is really being driven by how we're going to functionally manage human resource capital, the physical dispatchers, with the transition to the NG911 piece. I'm happy to speak on the agreement and the budgeting side as well, but I believe your CAO may have some commentary on that, so I'm happy to defer to him and then come back to it if need be.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Does that answer your question?
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Mr. Parisien?
Mr. Warden, Mr. Tarnowski, your predecessor, Monsieur Leroux, I'll go back a few years ago, requested that the financial, that the bill be paid at the county. So uploading fire dispatch services from the town of Hawkesbury, and also for the city of Clarence-Rockland, who uses the city of Ottawa for their own dispatch, to transfer these costs over to the county. I don't run the dispatch. I have no expertise in running the dispatch. I wouldn't even know where to start in telling you whether or not the plan that's being proposed is okay or not. I'm simply going on the fact that they are the experts. They provide us with the information, and that's why we hired through a contract the fire chief for the township of Champlain, Monsieur Pigeon, who's here with us today. So Monsieur Pigeon is our I'm going to call him our watchdog, but he's not. But he's our project manager when it comes to fire dispatch services and also for the communications aspect of it. So for us to provide a report, that's exactly the reason why I asked Chief Wilson to come to council this morning, was to provide that information. I wouldn't know where to start. So we're simply the ones that pay the bill. We pay the bill for 7 municipalities that use the service from the town of Hawkesbury. And we also cover the bill for the city of Rockland that uses the city of Ottawa to provide them. For the sake of making this fire dispatch more sensible, new partners would have to come on board. And if new partners would come on board, some of these partners would get their costs covered through the one getting the service, but it would also reduce our cost share. If there were more partners within. We're trying to get the city of Clarence-Rockland to come on board with us because they've been with the city of Ottawa for a number of years, and I think that would help the town of Hawkesbury to mitigate some of their costs if the city of Clarence-Rockland was to come on board at some point. And I'm not pressuring or saying, but we're trying to get them on board for sure. But I just want to clarify from my administrative perspective, for me to give you a report on this, I doubt that I have the expertise nor where to start to tell you whether this is good or not. We're working with them for a number of years. We've been asking a number of questions from Chief Wilson. We're satisfied with what he's presented here today, and I guess it's up to council to decide whether or not that makes sense for us. But at this point, we're only the broker.
Thank you, Mr. Parisien. Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, if I may, Mr. Warden, just for some budgetary information in relation to some of the questions that were raised, please know that your current fire dispatch service agreement, the wording in it provides for a total reimbursement of dispatch costs, which is very vague. And ultimately means, I guess in theory, Hawkesbury could move forwards with the staffing proposed in the report and just submit the expense back to the county. I don't think, my CAO is here, my mayor is here, we don't feel that that's fair to just do that without consultation with county council, which is part of the reason that we're here to have that discussion with you today. We think that it's important for all of the residents across UCPR to make an informed and educated decision in terms of what we're doing moving forwards. So I don't know that we need to, in essence, it's an amendment of the intent of the current agreement to change the staffing, but the wording in the current agreement is very vague, which is part of the reason we're asking for direction to start re-looking at that early in the new year. my discussions with, I believe the reference from the CEO was our watchdog, Chief Pigeon. Our discussions was to certainly look at how we reword that agreement to make it very clear for both parties, both the UCPR and the town of Hawkesbury, in terms of expectations, what that looks like, so that there's a very clear agreement. I wasn't here at this level when that agreement was put into place. I was the chief in Clarence-Rockland at that time. So I can't really speak to the wording in the agreement, but it is there.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. I will let Mr. Tarnowski, Mayor Tarnowski.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. So Chief, we're kind of in the same boat. I'm relatively new here too, since last year, and so I can't speak to what my predecessor did or how he did it. However, for me, again, to go back to me supporting a decision like that, and although we don't have the expertise and the staff, Monsieur Parisien, I still would expect that through a budget process, we can have discussions on what are the other options. I mean, Clarence-Rockland is currently with Ottawa. I don't even know if they're able to offer a bilingual service, and what have we explored Ottawa as an option? I'm just throwing that out there. Are there other possible options? And it doesn't sound like there are, but my point is that here I'm being asked to make a decision that's a major increase. We haven't started budget discussions, and I don't know anything about this. And as much as you're mentioning, Monsieur Parisien, that we don't have the expertise here, I'm even further behind. And then to top that off, the NFPA requirement that's being presented to us is kind of a little bit vague on whether we have to follow it or not. And so again, I'm just asking, I need more information to make major budget decisions like that. And I know in the scope of our entire budget, it's not a major one, but it's still an important one. So again, that's my position at this point.
I'm going to let Mr. Parisien talk, and then Mr. Wilson, and then we'll go to Madame Leroy.
Mr. Warden, Mr. Tarnowski, we have for a number of years tried to get services from other providers because we're in a contract right now with the town of Hawkesbury. That contract is almost being renewed on a year-to-year basis for the lack of finding a provider. The city of Ottawa has said to us plainly that they would not take on our contract, and they were actually looking to move away from their present contract. So I don't know what the contractual agreement is with the town of Clarence-Rockland, the city of Clarence-Rockland, and that's something that maybe I'm not sure that any of the people in this room can answer. But for with respect to budget, we're getting into budget next week. So it's a week from now. If council wants to defer this to next week, that's fine. If members don't feel like they can piecemeal this issue without looking at the greater scope of things within the budget discussion, that's fine. Okay with it. And 1 more week is not going to make much of a difference.
Thank you, Mr. Parisien, Mr. Wilson, and then Madame Lajoie.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Again, in context, when I was hired as the chief in Hawkesbury, one of the things I was told to look at was what we're doing. And one of the things that I did consider was contracting out fire dispatch services for the town of Hawkesbury, which obviously would have much broader implications for all of us in this room. The deciding factor for me was when I started having conversations with the Solicitor General's office and with other dispatch providers across the province, identifying that Hawkesbury offers the province of Ontario's only fully bilingual fire dispatch service. And to me, that drove me in a different direction because I believe that it's my responsibility as a public official for a fire department in the region to fight for my residents. And knowing that we're a bilingual county and that the town of Hawkesbury is a bilingual municipality, I believe it's my responsibility as a public official to fight to provide bilingual services to not only the public, but to the firefighters that serve our public. And that's what's driven me down this road and the reason that I'm standing in front of you today with this ask, because I believe that we owe it to fight to the bilingual residents in our county to provide a bilingual fire dispatch, which I cannot guarantee with anyone else. I was, as I mentioned earlier, the former fire chief in the city of Clarence-Rockland. Ottawa Fire Dispatch does not speak French over the radio. I can tell you on a daily basis, I have firefighters speaking French to our dispatchers daily on an almost every call basis. We will not be able to get that same level of service through someone else. If we move forwards with the report as outlined to you today, we will become one of only 3 dispatch services in Eastern Ontario that can meet the staffing outlined in 1225. Ottawa, Kingston, and us. Brockville cannot, Smiths Falls cannot, in addition to being bilingual. So again, all points considered, just some context to give you some background there.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Mayor Lajoie.
Thank you, Warden. Has the NG 911 been in effect since 2017? I'm just curious, from today, since 2017, is this something that could have been predicted and planned for within that time frame?
Go ahead, sir, Mr. Wilson.
Through
Sorry.
the warden. The transition to NG 911 was mandated by CRTC back in 2017. I think the implications of what exactly that was going to look like were not known fully at that time. I cannot speak for my predecessors. Again, I've been in Hawkesbury for about 6 months trying to figure out I've explored every option I can think of, to the point that I've actually, as silly as it sounds, I've contemplated whether I need to put toilets at every dispatch console so that way they can just go to the bathroom when they need to go to the bathroom. I mean, it's to that point where I'm scratching my head trying to find a solution to a problem. I think that we have been trying for the last number of years to figure out the solution on what we're going to do. Your watchdog, Chief Pigeon, who's here, has been pushing administration, county administration, very strongly in terms of rewording the dispatch agreements so that we are prepared for what this is going to look like. Again, I think there's been a transition in Hawkesbury for the last 18 months or thereabouts between the transition of the last fire chief to myself getting started. In that time frame, like anywhere else, there was a bit of a lack of direction on how we were going to move forwards. So to answer your question, we knew that NG 911 was coming in. We didn't know exactly what that was going to look like. Now that we are much clearer on what that's going to look like, we know what to expect. Our upstream provider is Owen Sound Police Service, and they just transitioned on to NG 911. They're now working on Brockville, and once Brockville's done, they'll be going to Smiths Falls and coming to Hawkesbury. So we've been told to anticipate February of 2026 in terms of when they're going to be knocking on our door to bring us on stream with NG 911.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Madame Parisien, Finance. Oh, okay. Go ahead. Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Thank
Sorry.
you. That's okay, but if it's related to that, that's okay. Okay. So my concern is that there's been many years that this could have been planned regarding our watchdog and all the other there's no reason for for this to have to be decided on within like a 6-month time frame. That's my concern. So if there was decisions that weren't made in the past and now we're left with this big price tag, I understand bilingualism is important for our residents. And I want to separate those two things, because this isn't about fighting for language. It's about dispatch, and it's about money at the end of the day and people's ability to afford life. So I think it's important that for me, I mirror what Mr. Tanowski had said. I don't have enough information. I don't understand why we're at this point right now and we're being asked such a big ask at this moment. And I need to understand more of the history so that I could feel good making this decision and justifying this increase to my people, because all our municipalities are going to be having big increases in taxes, water. I know the counties, we're going to have a huge jump, and this $3, I know it's just $3 a year, but to people that are on the brink, it makes a big difference. So we can't trivialize the fact that this is affecting our residents and our constituents. So I personally, in order to be able to make decisions for this budget, I need a lot more information and justification for the price. And if we've looked into other contracts, I would like more information regarding those contracts, and I want to see what what the responses were for myself, in a sense. Or maybe we could put out a full request. I don't think we've ever made an official ask to have the counties look into this officially and then come back with a report to the counties. So perhaps that's another avenue, but I would need a lot more information. And I appreciate all the work you guys do. I want to separate like the people from the ask, but it's a lot to take.
Thank you, Madame Lajoie. You want to speak, Mr., or I'm going to go to finance?
You can go to finance first, and if it doesn't get answered,
Okay.
I'll come back to it.
Madame Brière. Madame,
Mr. Warden, members of council, I was part of the conversations with Mr. Wilson and Ms. Kedzer when when Mr. Wilson prepared the report. Just for clarity, there are two issues at hand here. First and foremost, there's the short-term issue with the compliance. If we maintain the system as is, it'll cost 1.1 to comply. So that's one thing, and that was included in the preliminary budget for discussion. So that's included in there. Second is ultimately l'avenir du système de dispatch. C'est un service qui est essentiel. Il faut déterminer qu'est-ce qu'on fait avec ça. La façon que c'est déterminé ou établi, conformément au contrat en place, c'est trop court terme. Ça ne permet pas à M. Wilson d'embaucher du monde quand c'est tout le temps renouvelé à 1 an, 2 ans, ça on le comprend. Mais la question est plus large dans le sens, est-ce qu'on maintient le système tel, le dispatch chez nous, on le cherche ailleurs? Mais pour fin de budget, pour trouver des alternatives, on n'a pas grand temps, là, bien honnêtement, par rapport à ça. Fait que, through you, Mr. Warren, I'd like Mr. Wilson to clarify, like, if we reduce the budget that you're proposing to the current level, like, how much time does it give us to find an alternative, essentially? Because it's a compliance issue, and I think we have until 2027, you said in your report, or 2026. You may correct me on that. But like, what are council's options, essentially, very clearly, so that we can discuss these at budget next week?
thank you, Madame Parisien. Monsieur Wilson?
Through the warden to both questions from administration and council. The current plan is for our upstream agency, Owen Sound Police Service, to transition the Hawkesbury Fire Dispatch to NG 911 in February 2026. Without the staffing as recommended in this report, I would have to defer the transition to NG 911 because we will not be able to function. I will not be able to staff the dispatch center as of February of 2026 in order to allow for a dispatcher to use the facilities or meet basic human needs. That doesn't mean I can't defer it. So we can ask Owen Sound to defer and push us off. The deadline to transition per CRTC is early 2027, which would give us some time to source alternatives and figure out what we're going to do. The town of Hawkesbury and this council has committed a significant cost commitment already in preparation for the transition to NG 911. And I think it's worth council's consideration that to decide to move in a different direction now also means that a significant cost that has already been outlaid towards this transition is for naught, that you're looking to move in a different direction. You're certainly welcome to explore other options, but as mentioned earlier, and I believe as your CAO mentioned, previous discussions with the City of Ottawa, including during my tenure in Clarence-Rockland, were suggestive that the City of Ottawa was not likely to take on new dispatch clients. I can tell you with certainty that Smiths Falls and Brockville cannot offer you an NFPA 1225 compliant dispatch center like we're proposing. So your options would be to look further afield, perhaps Kingston or perhaps an Anglophone dispatch service somewhere else in the province. There are options. There are always options for what you want to do, but I think if you want to be able to provide the existing service and keep your dispatch jobs in UCPR and keep people employed in UCPR and keep that money in UCPR, then I think you need to look at how we provide United Counties of Prescott-Russell dispatch service that meets the needs of both our residents and our predominantly volunteer firefighters.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. You want to add something, Madame Parisien? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, Mr. Wilson. So do we have an option to bring back the budget to its initial level? So how much time will that buy us to find like an alternative and implement an alternative if council chose that route?
Thank you, Madame Parisien. Monsieur Wilson?
I mean, ultimately, council's going to determine, the existing agreement says we're going to submit costs to the counties and the counties is going to reimburse. If the direction from the United Counties Council is that you do not wish to move forwards with this staffing and maintain status quo, then I would tell you, effective the deadline for that transition in 2027, you will not have a fire dispatch in the United Counties of Prescott and Russell. So you are 16 to 18 months away from not having a fire dispatch service. That would be very tight in terms of a timeline to source and find another dispatch service and transition to it adequately to provide a seamless transition. Not to say it can't be done. I mean, anything can be done, but at the end of the day, I think it'd be very, very tight. But the deadline from CRTC to implement NG911 is early 2027.
You okay with Madame? I'm going to go with Mayor Lefebvre.
Merci, Mr. President. Thank you. Thank you, Chief Wilson, for your presentation, and thank you, members of council, for your comments. As you've mentioned, basically the timelines are short, and as Mayor Zant has mentioned, basically, and you responded to the question, this is an essential service, not something basically that we can ignore. Communication is everything in emergency services. If not, there are issues and problems. I was involved back in 2017 when I worked with the municipality of the town of Hawkesbury to prepare an agreement between all the municipalities, and it was at that time, basically, that the counties decided to take it over and distribute basically the costs regarding dispatching services. As it's been mentioned, and as Mr. Parisien has mentioned, and he has mentioned also, he has Mr. Justin Pigeon here, basically as his expert, to deal with this issue. It is an issue that the options are not necessarily there. If we lose the francophone/bilingual service, we lose it. And if we lose the dispatch service, we're all on our own, basically. And that's the issue. We're not talking about something as can we delay in a road or a street or a service. We're talking about an essential service that provides not only a response to everybody in terms of emergency, but with NG911, basically. Yes, we've already committed certain expenses in bringing fiber optics and bringing other items. I'm glad you mentioned, Chief Wilson, that we did have a meeting with the minister, Michael Kearns, basically, on this issue. He was very supportive, and we're going to be reaching out. But I understand your point of view that if we're going to have something marketable, we need to make a commitment because there are other municipalities that require that service. We can't guarantee, basically, the total revenue, but the only way we can market the product is if we're willing to consider and move forward in the product. So those are my comments. Thanks again, Chief Wilson. I know you didn't have a lot of time, basically, with us, and you had a mandate from our CAO regarding this issue, and I know you've been working cooperatively with Mr. Pigeon on this matter, and I think the idea is supportive, so we have to eventually make a decision so that if other municipalities wish to withdraw, basically they need to know immediately because the options are not there if they want to provide a bilingual service or not. Thank you, Mr. Warden.
Thank you, Mayor Lefebvre. I'm going to go to Mr. Parisien and then Mr. Wilson.
Mr. Warden, in all fairness, may not make the decision easier, but it would bring more clarity if you had the budget before you, which you don't. So in the greater scheme of things, next week you'll have all these numbers, and we're going to send those out to you by the end of the week, I believe, Madame Parisien. So I'm going to suggest that council defer this decision to next week when you give us direction after the presentation, and possibly ask Chief Wilson to come back next week. So if you have other questions once you've seen the budget, we're basically caught between a rock and a hard place. We don't have many options at this point. There are also legal and staffing implications for the town of Hawkesbury, which I can't get into public. That would have to be done and closed, and maybe there would be some necessity for having a quick 10-minute closed session possibly next week to talk about these implications. But there's a lot more information here that the previous council would have been privy to that some of you don't have. And in all fairness, maybe you should have all this information before you make that decision, which would probably make things a whole lot more clearer. But at the end of the day, we're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, and I'm going to request that council defer this to next week once we have our budget discussions.
Thank you, Mr. Parisien. We're going to go to Mr. Wilson and then Mr. Brière and then Tarnowski. Mayor Tarnowski.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I think the other part that I just want to share, prior to coming to you today, I did have a very clear and honest discussion with all of your fire chiefs as we met through our county chiefs meetings. I didn't want to come to this meeting and stand in front of you without understanding whether or not I have your fire chief support for what we're talking about. And I think I can speak for all of the chiefs in the county to say that we have the support, that Hawkesbury and this proposal has the county chief's support, including some discussions with the chief from Clarence Rockland. And again, I can't commit Clarence Rockland to future decisions, obviously, but I know that there was some very positive discussions about potentially seeing Clarence Rockland come over if and when we can get the dispatch center to where it needs to be. Which helps share some of that cost. Again, I can't commit to a timeline on that or anything else, but I know that the preliminary discussions on that were very favorable. So just understand that all of your fire chiefs have been consulted and were discussed. This wasn't brought in isolation without talking to them first.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. We're going to go to Mr. Brière, Mayor Brière.
Yeah, my question is, what's the consequences of non-compliance? Like, what if we just choose to not comply? Because it seems like there's an awful lot of places in Ontario that are in a worse off position than we are. So why are we the third ones in all of Ontario to have to comply? What if we don't do it? What are the consequences?
Thank you, Mayor Brière. Mr. Wilson.
So through the warden, it's really not an option. So what's going to happen as of March of 2027, the traditional 911 phone lines, the copper phone lines, will cease to function and exist. Once the upstream agencies have transitioned to NG911, everything's going to happen over these electronic consoles. Everything's moving to voice over internet. And part of the infrastructure that's already been invested was dedicated fiber lines that run from North Bay, where your 911 call initially goes to be routed. It goes from there on dedicated fiber lines to Owen Sound through their servers to route it to the appropriate agency, which is here. So dedicated fiber lines from Owen Sound exist to 780 Spence and Hawkesbury, the existing dispatch center, with the backup dedicated fiber lines running to this building. That infrastructure is already in place. Once the transition to NG911 is fully in place and mandated, the traditional 911 phone lines will cease to exist. So you will not have a 911 service.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Does that answer a question? Mayor Tarnowski.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. So I will propose to defer this until next week. In my proposal to defer, I would also ask that next week, when we receive the information, that we can have a little more detail on the cost breakdown. I would like to have a real good understanding on the compliance piece between NG 911, Ontario Fire Marshal's requirement, and NFP 1725. Again, NFP 1725 for members of the council here. Some of them are required as part of the Ontario Fire Marshal regulations, but some are just practices. And so I just want to make sure that I understand. The other aspect I would like to see next week when we start discussing that is that staffing requirement. So having, and I 100% agree, Chief, that I would hate to force someone to be in the washroom and have to answer emergency calls. That is not acceptable in this day and age. Having said that, I would like to understand the requirement for supervisor, because I believe there was 2 positions being added. And so if we are essentially paying for the full pop here, as we say, I would like to just understand the rationale behind the increase and having an additional supervisor, and why is there a way to do that? Or is it because there's 2 people, we need a supervisor? Or can the second person be a supervisor as well? Why wouldn't that be a possibility? So I would like to have a good understanding of that. But all that going back to my point is I would like to propose to defer this till next week. Thank you. Merci.
Thank you, Mayor Tarnowski. Madame Lajoie.
Thank you, Warden. So at the end of the day, I think the concerns are the time crunch, the costs, and the lack of information. Your work has been phenomenal. I could appreciate the amount of work that you've had to do in 6 months to figure this out and then provide this information. And then if it comes down to it, if it comes to being bilingual or Anglophone, to me, I think it is a no-brainer that within Prescott-Russell, we need bilingual services. Without it, I think we'd be stepping back for all the work that a lot of Francophone people have achieved over the years. So that's definitely something we need to support So at the end of the day, for me, it comes down to due diligence and accountability. So I need to be able to speak to this to my constituents and feel confident and knowing that I'm making the proper information. So as Mr. Tarnowski had mentioned, there's a lot of information that needs to be answered, and hearing what different options there are to kind of look at the budgeting to see if there's ways to decrease cost and still maintain the compliance. I think that would help me for the budget discussion. Thank you, Mr. Warden.
Thank you, Mayor Lajoie. Mayor Lefebvre.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Et je comprends entièrement les inquiétudes, mais au bout de la ligne, les options sont très rares. Et si on veut faire quelque chose à court terme et à long terme, je pense qu'il faut considérer qu'est-ce qui se passe présentement ou les discussions qu'on a présentement. Mais j'inviterais quand même tous les maires, puis c'est une suggestion qui a été faite essentiellement par Chief Wilson, qui a eu communiqué avec tous les chefs de service dans les municipalités. Alors j'invite les maires de consulter le peuple chef de service pour le feu, pour avoir plus d'informations qu'on ne peut pas peut-être nécessairement partager aujourd'hui. Alors, je vous invite de communiquer et une fois qu'on va être revenu, je pense qu'on va avoir peut-être une meilleure idée et une compréhension des enjeux qu'on a et les défis. Si on veut donner un service essentiel et, disons, obligatoire. Alors, merci, Monsieur le Président, pour mes paroles et merci, Monsieur Wilson, pour votre présentation aujourd'hui.
Merci, Mayor Lefebvre. Mayor Tarnowski.
So just going back to my point, I proposed that we defer to next week and during budget discussions, and that all the other points that I'd raised beforehand.
Thank you, Mayor Tarnowski. Mr. Zant? Je pense qu'il y avait déjà une proposition et une secondaire pour recevoir le dossier.
That's
Go ahead,
correct.
Mr. Zant.
Thank you, Warden. That's correct. This one, but his motion is to defer, so I second the defer, what I'm saying.
He's gonna read the
Monsieur le
resolution.
Président, qu'il soit résolu que ce point soit reporté à la réunion du Conseil du 29 octobre 2025.
Proposed by Tarnowski and Zant, Mayor Zant. All in favor? C'est accepté. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Wilson.
Monsieur le
Thank you for your
Président,
report and thank you for answering
le
all the
Président.
questions.
juste pour votre information, pour finaliser le tout, la
Oui,
semaine
vas-y.
prochaine, on va ramener la résolution qu'on a amenée aujourd'hui une autre fois.
Thank you, Mr. You want to add something?
Warden, I'd like to just request a 5-minute adjournment.
Okay.
Thank you.
On va prendre 5 minutes de break. Alors, bonjour tout le monde. Nous allons passer maintenant à l'item 6, qui est le point de consentement. 6.1, c'est le procès verbal de la réunion ordinaire du Conseil du 24 septembre 2025. 6.2, compte du mois. 6.3, TP-0015-2025, prolongation du contrat de liquide pour prémouiller du sel. Je vais lire la résolution. Qu'il soit résolu que le point de consentement soit adopté tel que présenté. J'ai besoin d'un proposeur et d'un appuyeur. M. Tarnowski, M. Brière. Questions, commentaires? Il n'y en a pas. Tu es en faveur? Oh, allez-y, M. Zan.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Item 6.3 pour le sel. So obviously, we're talking about going towards
Monsieur le Président, si on veut
Oui.
parler d'un sujet, il faut
Faut
le
retirer.
sortir du premier mai.
So,
Ouais.
yeah, but he was about to read it without. So I'd like to remove 6.3 for.
Monsieur le Président, qu'il soit résolu que le point 6.3 soit abordé séparément.
Ça a l'air banal, Monsieur le Président, mais on est obligé de faire ça pour les fins du...
OK, d'accord. Est-ce qu'on vote sur le restant des résolutions? Oui. Qu'il soit résolu que les points 6.1 et 6.2, j'ai besoin d'un proposeur et d'un appuyeur là-dessus. Je suis en faveur. C'est d'adopter. Allez-y, M. Zant.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Monsieur Bouchard, has Dali's performance, like delivery times, quality, customer service, has ever been formally evaluated? Like, why are we going through this and awarding them? Unless I misread the report, but
Nope.
we're choosing to award them. And I'm only asking because, you know, there could have been other vendors, new vendors in the area since 2023. Are we giving them any thought as well? I'm only asking because I don't necessarily think that, I think it's an easy way, I understand why, but I think it is easy to just simply say, we're just going to just give them the contract without submitting. But at some point, maybe we should be looking at those types of things. So number one, performance on service standards and customer service has been evaluated, and has any other new vendors have emerged since 2023 that we could use?
Thank you, Mayor Zant. M. Bouchard.
Monsieur Laviolette, Monsieur le Président, Monsieur Zant, en principe, I'll answer the second question first. So if there are other suppliers, I'm not aware of any other new suppliers in the area. There used to be 3 suppliers that were bidding on the bids since I've been at the counties and even at the township beforehand. But Dali purchased, I think it was Innovative Solution, which Dali purchased them a few years ago, just before 2023, actually. So there were 2 bidders back in 2023, which was Pollard and Dali. Pollard is usually not the same product that we asked for. It's a brine. But again, it's still compliant. But it was more expensive back then for that product than it is right now, and even with the CPI indexing of the price at this moment. Because it's 41 cents in 2023. Even by indexing the price from Dali, we're still below the lowest bidder back in 2023. I doubt that a new bid would reduce the cost. We've never seen that before in any type of bids, that they would be lower than back in 2023. So I think it's a fair deal for the counties, considering that there's not a significant increase in pricing, especially we're just following CPI.
And a follow-up, Warden, on that. Thank you, Mr. Bouchard. But what about their performance, their quality? Like, are they still at a good standard?
Mr. Warden, Mr. Zand, we had some issues with another supplier back in the days. We changed products, so now it's a calcium chloride, which performs a lot better during colder time of the year. We had some issues with our pump and whatnot, but this has all been fixed. I've asked for the last 2 years, and apparently everything seems to be working well, especially on the delivery. They're very good for this in terms for the counties, so we don't see any issues in terms of performance.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Merci, Monsieur Bouchard.
Thank you, everyone. Mr. Tarnowski. Mayor?
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Not to go on too much on this, I just wanted to just make note that what Mayor Zant was asking, I think is perfectly reasonable in terms of market analysis and performance metrics when we're asked to recommit with a contractor like that. So I'm okay in this case to extend it, but I think we can all save some time just to have that as part of the reports when we do that. I think it's just, again, for peace of mind from our perspective as to why we're just extending without going back. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Tarnowski. Any more questions? Non? Je vais lire la décision. Qu'il soit résolu que le Conseil accepte l'option 1 comme indiqué dans le rapport TP-015-2025. Un proposeur, un appuyeur. M. Tarnowski. M. Lefebvre, en faveur? C'est adopté.
Monsieur le Président, on aurait aussi besoin d'un proposeur puis un appuyeur pour le point 6.3 qui a été abordé séparément.
OK. Proposeur? Je pense que c'est ce qu'on veut. Non?
OK. Monsieur le Président, désolé.
D'accord. On passe à l'item 7.
Monsieur le Président, on n'a pas terminé.
Allez-y.
Madame Parisien, allez-y donc.
Monsieur le Président, je pense que ça prend une résolution pour... On a approuvé les consent items, mais ça prend aussi une résolution pour appuyer le retrait de l'item. Puis là, vous l'avez
OK.
passé aussi, l'item, l'approbation de la recommandation de M. Bouchard, mais ça prend aussi une résolution pour retirer l'item des consent items. Je pense que vous avez juste approuvé les consent items excluant le 6.3.
Oui, c'est ça, vous ne l'avez pas retiré, en fait.
We didn't do a formal resolution to pull it out. We didn't have a proposer or seconder to say all in favor of pulling this. I think that's what they're saying. We just need the proposer,
On a
seconder.
besoin d'une
that's it.
résolution pour retirer le sujet. On va prendre un proposeur, Monsieur le Président, qui est M.
J'ai besoin-
Tarnowski.
OK.
Ça va prendre un appuyeur.
Monsieur le Président, il soit résolu que le point 6.3 soit abordé séparément, mais on a besoin d'un appuyeur, un proposeur puis appuyeur.
Mayor Tarnowski, Mayor Zant. En faveur? C'est adopté. Après ça, on l'a voté. Item 7. Avis de motion et de résolution écrite des membres 7.1. Le maire Mike Tarnowski. 7.1.1. Mandat du président du Conseil des Conseils de Prescott-Russell. Est-ce que je vais lire la résolution maintenant? Attendu que le mandat actuel du président du Conseil des Conseils de Prescott-Russell est d'une durée de 1 an et attendu que l'établissement d'un mandat de 2 ans pour le président est une pratique courante dans plusieurs autres municipalités de palier supérieur en Ontario, et entendu que la stabilité du leadership favorise une meilleure planification stratégique, une présentation intergouvernementale plus efficace et un soutien continu de l'administration régionale. Et attendu que l'expérience récente du mandat prolongé de M. Normand Riopel a mis en évidence les avantages d'une continuité dans la fonction de président. Et attendu que toute modification à la durée j'ai perdu ma ligne. Entendu que la modification à la durée du mandat du président doit être adoptée avant le 31 décembre 2025 afin d'entrer en vigueur pour le mandat 2026 à 20-2030, conformément à la loi de 2001 sur les municipalités. Qu'il soit résolu que le Conseil des Conseils de Prescott-Russell mandate l'administration à préparer un rapport et une ébauche de règlement pour modifier la durée du mandat du président du Conseil des Conseils de Prescott-Russell à 2 ans, et ce, à compter du mandat de 2026 à 2030 J'ai un proposeur, M. Tarnowski et M. Brière, qui ont appuyé ça. Est-ce qu'il y a des questions ou des commentaires? Monsieur Zant? Maria Zant?
Je laisse la parole, Monsieur le Président, à Madame Lajoie qui avait la main levée avant moi. Merci, Monsieur le Président. I know that other people, other counties do this. I guess my question is, I'd like to see identified what is wrong with the current system that we have now and why we feel that it is not working. Because we've been doing this every year, and again, it's nothing against your motion, but I think for me, just like you, I like to kind of make a decision based on everything. What's not working with the one-year terms? I understand in here it actually says better strategic planning and more effective intergovernmental representation and continued support for regional administration, but those are all things that can be also done in 1 year. So what's not working with the 1 year that we are, as well as many others, are still doing, even though it's 2 years? Merci.
Thank you, Mayor Zant. Mayor Tarnowski?
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Monsieur Zant, la raison derrière la proposition, c'est vraiment, although I have limited experience here in the first year here, I saw under Warden Riopel a person that was engaged and had gotten into connecting with at the regional level, at the provincial level, being more interconnected. And I feel that from a resident's perspective, we're getting more bang for the buck when we have the continuity as opposed to a restart every year. And in looking at some of the other municipalities that have adopted that, in speaking with some of the wardens or mayors in those municipalities, they say it's definitely more efficient. And so the reason behind that, again, is strictly for efficiency, allowing a warden to really get connected at the regional level and the provincial level, I think benefits all of us, all of our municipalities. And again, I'll refer back to my experience with Mayor Riopel when he was in that position. I certainly had lots of comfort with that, and I feel that it's just more efficient and optimizing a process. And that's the rationale behind it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Tarnowski. Anybody wants to add? Mr. Lefebvre?
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Thank you, and thank you for your resolution, Mayor Tosnowski. My concern basically is the commitment in terms of a mayor of a municipality committing 2 years to the process. I know that there's a certain amount of continuity, but we do have excellent staff here in terms of the administrators who provide us a lot of information, a lot of background. My only concern is, will any mayor be willing to commit a 2-year term, basically, out of their 4-year term as mayor, because it's a very demanding job. So it's certainly something that will be, in the minds of anybody who's willing to basically submit their name as warden. Nothing prevents, I think, the present rules of orders. I think, Mr. Parisien, that a warden cannot apply again for another term if he wishes. But that's my only issue. Personally, I would have to consider, very seriously applying for a position or an opportunity of being warden for a 2-year term, knowing that I have commitments. So that's the only issue on a personal level. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Lefebvre. Madame Lajoie?
Thank you, Warden, and thank you, Council, for bringing this matter up. So in terms of a 2-year term, I'm a full-time mayor. I work full-time every day for my constituents in my municipality. I don't do this on the side. And I could tell you that I see a huge benefit to being full-time, because you have the opportunity to think more creatively, push more innovative ideas, take more risks, because you have the longevity to see things through. So I could definitely see the benefit of having a 2-year term, but whether or not it's more efficient for us, I haven't seen anything otherwise to prove that point. And I know some municipalities even have a voting system where the warden is picked for the full 4-year term. So I mean, there's other models as well. So I think if council's questioning this, I think maybe it'd be worth looking at all the different systems that are in place right now across other regions to see and get their feedback for the pros and the cons. My concern with the warden position here that I would like changed is the transparency. I feel that the warden position's chosen very early on for the full 4 years, and I need to know who's being chosen, who's nominating who, who's seconding who, because I don't have that information, and that's already currently been established. I would like that changed. And another thing that's important to mention is women have a difficult time in politics. And I know as men, you don't necessarily understand the nuances of being a woman in this position. It's very challenging. And, you know, going to suites at conferences, I don't like going to those. I don't go to those, but those are prime times that you become part of the inner circle. And I think we need to recognize that there's been 2 women mayors that have both put their names out for warden that have never been chosen or considered. And I think we need to look at not tokenism, but gender equality and diversity within our warden system as well. So we're not just looking at terms. What we need to do is look at the regional benefits of who's representing the people. And we need to look at what each mayor has done in the past to prove that they are willing to run regional business and that they don't want to be warden just to support their municipality, because it has nothing to do with your municipality and it has everything to do with how we interact with the larger entities that exist. So if we're looking at creating some sort of criteria, I would like those points considered.
Thank you, Mayor Lajoie. Mayor Brière.
The reason why I supported this was simply from an administrative point of view. You speak to administration, they're all for this because of the fact that they're not having to bring somebody up to speed every year. So having someone for 2 years, it avoids the administration and having to bring everybody up to speed all the time. And with that being said, it also, from an accountability perspective, if someone's in a position for 2 years, he really gets intimate with all the files. He really gets intimate with what works and what doesn't work, and can exert his philosophy and his way of how he feels the counter should be administered. Because again, this is a large endeavor, and when you jump on board, there's a lot to learn, and that learning curve is, again, probably 4 months, 3, 4, or 5 months. And by the time you get in there, you're already kind of have 1 foot out the door. So if you have 2 full years, you can really get intimate with the procedures and with what the files ask of you. And not only that, I'll echo what Mr. Lefebvre was saying. You're not just going to have someone who does it for a picture on the wall. It's a real commitment, and we need to choose someone who's really qualified to do it. So I think that philosophy change will also come whenever we do the 2-year term. So that's the reasons why I supported this going forward.
Thank you, Mayor Brière, Mayor Zant, and then Mr. Mayor Tarnowski.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. I'm going to go to Monsieur Parisien because his experience on having seen many councils and many other councils at counties. Is there such thing as having a deputy warden? Does anybody else have deputy wardens that could assist the warden in a 2-year term? And so I'm not against it, but I'm thinking if somebody like Monsieur Lefebvre mentioned about being kind of like after 2 years, it's a lot to handle, plus you're still mayor. Maybe a deputy warden, not in terms of here, but just that somebody that the warden could rely on as being a deputy to be able to split the task and be able to go to different functions at the same time, just to be able to alleviate that. I don't know if that's been done or if it's even doable.
Go ahead,
Warden,
Mr.
Zant, there are places where they have a deputy warden. I'll just remind council that this is a notice of motion, so it's meant to be spoken to next month. I was reprimanded by the clerk last month for speaking my mind when I shouldn't have done that in my verbal report. So I'll just, it's okay. So I'll just remind council that the notice is for us to bring a report, and you'll have plenty of time to discuss it.
Sorry, the notice was done last month. This is the actual
It's
proposition.
Give me a second here. Whatever, we've been discussing it for the last 5 minutes, so I don't think it really matters. Anyways, yes, there are places where they have deputy wardens, and in fact, SDNG does it. So the deputy warden for this year is slotted for next year to become warden.
Follow-up, Warden?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Warden. Thank you, Monsieur Parisien. I'd be able to support this as well, but I like the idea of having a deputy warden there just to be able to assist the warden in functions, especially if it's going to be over a 2-year term. That might be an option that I'm hoping that council will consider.
Mayor Tarnowski.
So I've got a couple of points to make. First of all, from a procedural point of view, the notice of motion was done last meeting, and so this meeting, I assumed we were moving to a vote, but I also did notice that in the information that was shared with council in preparation for the meeting, that we also had a period for public review of this afterwards till November 12th, because I saw there was a date for November 12th. Did I get clarification for that? I'm not sure about the requirement for that.
Can anyone clarify this?
Monsieur le Président, selon la loi, on doit faire un avis public pour laisser les citoyens se pencher un peu sur la question. Donc, c'est pour ça qu'on a créé une résolution que par le 12 novembre, que les résidents nous fassent parvenir leurs commentaires ou leurs questions, puis ils vont pouvoir aussi venir discuter au micro si tel est le besoin.
Mais est-ce que cette période n'est pas entamée quand on fait un notice of motion?
Je ne crois pas, non. On peut vérifier, mais...
OK, ça serait à confirmer. Ça, c'était mon premier point. Monsieur le Président, j'ai quelques autres points que je voulais faire aussi sur l'affaire. Au niveau du député Warden, j'ai pas de problème à regarder ça comme option. Ça pourrait supporter le Warden, absolument. Par contre, je pense, et M. Berthiaume pourrait confirmer ça, mais si je me fie à mon expérience ici depuis l'année passée, si jamais il y a une contrainte avec le président pour se présenter à une réunion ou quoi que ce soit, je sais que M. Berthiaume nous rejoint tous, voir si quelqu'un peut venir à sa place. Alors, on a déjà quelque chose comme ça pour nous aider. Encore une fois, l'idée du 2 ans, pour moi, c'était vraiment d'assurer comme a better functioning of the 4-year term. Et puis, je serais aussi d'accord avec Mme Lajoie au niveau de processus, ou encore une fois, je suis très nouveau au concept, mais je me suis fait dire dès du début que les postes étaient comme tout le monde. La première année, il dit « OK, moi, je vais être l'année 1, l'année 2, puis si on fait des deals d'un bord puis l'autre, j'aimerais ça, puis ça, je ne sais pas comment on fait ça, mais j'aimerais ça qu'il y ait un système un petit peu plus transparent et puis où il y a la chance de vraiment choisir la meilleure personne. Puis je ne dis pas qu'on ne choisit pas la meilleure personne, mais que vraiment que le public ait une confiance qu'on choisit la meilleure personne. Puis cette personne-là nous représente. Puis mon dernier point, Monsieur le Président, si vous me permettez, c'est de dire que la période de 2 ans, effectivement, est longue et plus longue. C'est le double. En tant que maire, ou même en tant qu'élu, on prend 4 ans. On sait dans quoi qu'on s'embarque. Si on va s'embarquer dans le poste de président pour 2 ans, on devrait savoir si on est en mesure de le faire. Mais au pire, on peut toujours dire qu'on n'est pas capable après 1 an, puis on peut changer ça. Fait que ça, je ne pense pas que c'est une limitation. Et, je sais que j'avais dit que c'était mon dernier point, mais j'ai vraiment un dernier point. Ça serait de peut-être donner la parole à mon partner ici, juste pour savoir de son expérience, si lui a vécu une différence dans la deuxième année versus la première année au niveau de ses fonctions. Et si je peux me permettre de vous poser la question, Monsieur le maire, si vous avez aperçu une différence ou pas.
Allez-y, Monsieur Riopel.
Merci, M. le Président. M. Tonorski, dans mes fonctions, c'est certain que le 2 ans était intéressant. Tu arrives déjà dans une situation où c'est que la tablée est déjà installée, donc c'est une poursuite de ce que tu as déjà entamé. C'est certain que le deuxième terme, ou la deuxième année, c'était beaucoup plus facile. La première année, c'est une année de transition. C'est de connaître exactement chaque département de Eastern Warden Caucus. On siège sur beaucoup plus de comités. Donc, c'est important d'être capable de continuer ces dossiers-là. Est-ce que ça va avoir un impact majeur sur un maire qui veut prendre le dossier pour 2 ans? Pour certains, oui. Pour certains autres, non, parce que ça va être peut-être une tâche plus lourde. Je comprends le système de un warden par année, parce que dans le temps, il y avait 18 maires qui s'assisaient ici, donc c'était peut-être plus difficile de devenir warden, donc ça passait plus facile au vote. Tandis qu'ici, on est 8, on est capable de s'entendre. Je ne veux pas dire que ce n'est pas transparent. Je pense que ça l'est. C'est juste que si ce n'est pas mon tour, puis si je n'ai pas l'appui du conseil, ça ne me tentera pas de mettre mon nom pour me faire dire que tu ne l'auras pas. Donc, je pense que, écoutez, le terme d'1 an, c'est bon. Le terme de 2 ans serait mieux. Mais ça, c'est à chacun de nous de vouloir décider si cette option-là est valable.
Merci, M. Riopel. Est-ce que ça répond à votre question, M. Tarnowski?
Oui, Monsieur le Président, merci beaucoup.
La seule chose que je peux rajouter, moi, c'est que c'est demandant. Puis, j'imagine que les gens qui travaillent, puis les gens qui sont déjà au travail, je sais que c'est de plus en plus jeune maintenant, les maires, ces choses-là, mais est-ce qu'on peut se commettre pour 2 ans? Ça reste à savoir. Allez-y, M. Riopel.
Moi, juste rajouter un point sur le terme de 2 ans. C'est que ça va peut-être éliminer certains maires dans la compétition, surtout si l'année prochaine, dans notre cas, ça l'est, mais dans les prochaines années futures, quand il vient le temps de l'année d'élection, si le maire est 2 ans en poste, comme warden, puis qu'il faut qu'il court son élection, puis en plus, il faut qu'il fasse sa municipalité, il va vous dire, là, il va patauger pas à peu près, parce que c'est exigeant, c'est demandant. Ça serait le seul petit point négatif que je pourrais penser comme c'est là, à cause de cette année d'élection-là. Tandis que si tu l'as pour 1 an, tu peux quand même manager, mais la deuxième année, tu sais déjà tes dossiers, tu es déjà impliqué. En temps normal, tu veux en faire plus, donc tu es porté à négligent quelque part. Ça serait de valeur de voir un maire négligé chez eux pour se faire valoir absolument aux comptes des unis. Ça serait peut-être un point négatif.
Merci, M. Riopel. Est-ce que quelqu'un d'autre veut rajouter quelque chose ou si on vote sur la première résolution? On va aller sur la deuxième résolution. Qu'il soit résolu que la réunion publique soit tenue le 12 novembre 2025 à 9 h afin d'examiner la question de modifier le mandat du président d'1 an à 2 ans. J'ai besoin d'un proposeur et d'un appuyeur là-dessus. M. Tarnowski, M. Brière, tous en faveur? C'est adopté. Yeah, sure.
Are we voting on the actual, we're going to vote on the motion now, right? Okay, so I just had a question before we close the discussion.
Okay, go ahead.
Before we vote, my question is, are we going to look at the criteria for choosing a warden as well? Today,
I don't think so. Go ahead, Monsieur Parisien.
Mr. Warden, Madame Lajoie, the way I see it right now, we're going to have our public meeting on the 12th, and the administration's supposed to bring back something on the 29th. Whether or not, if you want us to look at possibly putting criteria forward on this, we can certainly look.
Go ahead.
thank you, Warden. Thank you, Mr. Parisien. My question, I guess, is last time when you spoke, you had mentioned that it's not really staff's decision to make criteria for the politicians choosing the criteria. So would you be more comfortable if council put forward their ideas for criteria for you to include in your report, or did you want to develop that yourself?
Mr. Warden, Madame Lajoie, becoming warden is very political, so I would welcome council's input, even if it's not part of our report, that also can be added the day of your discussion and your vote. And that can actually weigh into making that decision. And if we have to modify the motion at that time.
Thank you, Mr. Parizien.
Just for clarity, Madame Cadieux is going to be writing up that report with some input from a few of our colleagues. And once we clear the November 12th meeting, then better position to formalize this. And if council members have some input, we'll gladly take.
Merci, M. Parizien. Je pense qu'on avait déjà voté sur la résolution. Ça fait que on peut passer maintenant à l'item. Go ahead.
Sorry, I wasn't ready to vote all in favor. I had my hand up for a question before we voted in favor. So my question is, are we giving the criteria today, or are we going to do that November 12th?
Go ahead.
Mr. Warden, Madame Lajoie, if council wants to give us a criteria that's part of our report, do so now. I mean, we're all discussing it. If you have a mover with that criteria, you can put it forward.
Do we have to move to reopen the discussion in order to do that at this point?
Mr. Warden, Madame Lajoie, wouldn't complicate things. If you want to put something forward and you have a mover, we'll put it in. Otherwise, we'll consider it closed.
Monsieur Mayor Tarnowski.
Monsieur le Président, I think because we have this public meeting on the coming up on November 12th, where there's an opportunity for people to ask questions and so on, I think it gives us also a little bit of time to reflect on some of the ideas that came up today and some of the thoughts. And perhaps I think I would be more comfortable in looking at some of those criteria and options, or thinking about them prior to the 12th, and then on the 12th. I'd be certainly more informed to look at that option, if that's okay with you, Mayor Lajoie.
And sir, your worship, at the end of the day, it's an election process. And we all know what happens in an election. You ask your colleagues, can you move my nomination? Can you support my nomination? So let's remember that at the end of the day, I can put all procedures, all the rules in place. It's an election and it's a political process.
Merci, M. Parizien. C'est comme quelqu'un qui m'a demandé au début de la réunion, est-ce que ça va être court? J'ai dit aucune idée. Puis là, on voit que ça ne se termine pas. Alors, on va aller à l'item 7.2, Maire Mario Zant, 7.2.1, qui était proposé par, j'ai été proposé par monsieur, pour discussion, par M. Mario Zant, et secondé par moi-même. Ça fait que je vais demander à mon collègue de lire la résolution.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Donc, l'avis de motion va comme suit. Attendu que la Fédération des clubs de motoneige de l'Ontario gère et entretient plus de 30 000 km de sentiers de motoneige à travers l'Ontario pour quelques 85 000 motoneigistes, selon un modèle de financement par les usagers entièrement soutenu par les détenteurs de permis de sentier sans recours aux fonds publics, et attendu que le réseau de sentiers de la FCMO contribue entre 3 et 6 milliards de dollars par année à l'économie ontarienne, soutenant plus de 9 300 emplois équivalents temps plein et générant environ 538 millions de dollars en recettes fiscales fédérales, provinciales et municipales, et attendu que le ministère du Transport de l'Ontario a récemment refusé la demande de la FCMO visant une augmentation modeste de 7 soit 14,98 du tarif du permis de sentier de motoneige pour la saison 2026, après un refus similaire pour la saison 2025, malgré le soutien généralisé des clubs membres de la FCMO, et attendu que ce refus compromet la viabilité du réseau de sentiers de motoneige de l'Ontario, exerçant une pression accrue sur les clubs bénévoles locaux, menaçant la qualité et la sécurité du réseau de sentiers et mettant en péril la stabilité économique de nombreuses communautés qui dépendent fortement du tourisme de motoneige. Il soit résolu que le Conseil des comptes unis de Prescott-Russell exprime son plein soutien à la demande de la Fédération des clubs de motoneige de l'Ontario visant à mettre en œuvre une augmentation raisonnable du tarif de permis afin de maintenir des sentiers de motoneige sécuritaires et de haute qualité à travers l'Ontario. Il soit également résolu que le Conseil exhorte le gouvernement de l'Ontario à mandater le ministère des Transports pour qu'il travaille de manière proactive et en collaborative avec la FCMO afin d'établir un processus d'approbation des permis équitable, transparent et rapide qui tienne compte des réalités opérationnelles et des contributions économiques de la motoneige en Ontario. Il soit également résolu qu'une copie de cette résolution soit transmise à l'honorable Pragmeet Sarkaria, ministre des Transports, à l'honorable Doug Ford, premier ministre de l'Ontario, à l'honorable Graydon Smith, ministre des Richesses naturelles et des Forêts, à la Fédération des clubs de motoneige de l'Ontario et à l'Association des municipalités de l'Ontario.
Merci beaucoup. Est-ce qu'on a des questions ou des commentaires? Madame Lajoie, Maire Lajoie.
Sorry, this is just a procedural question. When a mayor seconds a motion, I don't think it's the clerk that could present it. I think you have to remove yourself from the chair and appoint another council member in your place. Is it different for this procedural bylaw? Because in Councilman, that's how we.
Mayor Zant.
Je peux clarifier, Monsieur le Président. Si tu es maire et warden, là, tu te retires parce que tu as une motion, mais Monsieur le Président a secondé ma motion, c'est la mienne, et je ne suis pas président. Alors, de ma compréhension, c'est correct que je peux en parler. C'est ma motion, c'est pas la sienne. Un secondaire, c'est vraiment pour tabler la motion sur la table pour discussion. Ce n'est pas plus que ça.
Monsieur Parisien.
Oui, Monsieur le Président, Monsieur Zant a raison, là. Mais moi, ce que je vais vous recommander ce matin, parce que je vois que les deux sujets sont dans l'avis de motion, puis en principe, selon moi, je peux me tromper, là, c'est fait pour être discuté le mois prochain. Et donc, il y a quand même une urgence là, à discuter de ce dossier-là. Donc, moi, ce que je vais vous recommander pour qu'on soit clean, c'est que si le Conseil veut en parler aujourd'hui, ce serait de lever les règles de procédure avec un vote des 2/3. Donc, 6/8, puis on pourrait régler ça aujourd'hui. C'est une suggestion que je vous fais. Parce que je peux voir venir qu'il y a des questions, puis c'est tout de suite, on est déjà rendu. Puis à ce moment-là, bien, Mme Cadieux ne pourra pas me dire, mais qu'elle revienne de vacances, M. Parisien, vous n'avez pas fait votre job.
Monsieur le Président, si vous me permettez, Monsieur le Président, j'aimerais demander au Conseil d'appuyer cette motion à 2/3 afin de discuter aujourd'hui.
Mayor Tarnowski.
De lever les règles de procédure, Monsieur le Président. Donc, c'est proposé par M. Zant. Ça va vous prendre un appuyeur. Il a de l'air d'être M. Lefebvre.
Oui. M. Lefebvre va appuyer.
Là, vous allez demander le vote. Ça vous prend au moins 6 membres qui disent oui.
Those in favor?
C'est en faveur.
I need a good show of hands. Là. I need to see 6 hands. Yes, it's unanimous. Là, Monsieur le Président, vous avez la liberté de discuter de ce dossier.
OK, bien, merci beaucoup. Monsieur Mario Zant.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. On l'a entendu, là, it's pretty clear. But I just want to just kind of put a picture in your minds. Essentially, there's a gigantic map of snowmobile routes in the Prescott-Russell area. All of these little routes have what we call dead ends. So it's basically where the snowmobile clubs go into Nation, go into Hawkesbury, go into Clarence Rockland, all of our municipalities. Because most of the snowmobile clubs routes are through fields or the sentier récréatif and that sort of thing. The actual association is requesting an increase in their fees. This is very strange. The reason is that they are in charge of maintaining it. They spend millions of dollars maintaining this. The province ministry, per se, is only the one that actually generates and just maintains. They collect the fees and then they give them back the money. They're just essentially there to just make sure that that the fees are collected. As it says here in 2025 and 2026, they requested an increase because they're running out of cash. They're running a deficit in the millions of dollars. And instead, the ministry said, just cut off your dead ends, which is all the parts that go into our municipalities. We see the impact that the snowmobile clubs have in our region. They are a huge producer of economic development. And I think that this is why we're bringing this up now. On aimerait envoyer une lettre au ministère, comme ça le dit, pour vraiment demander d'augmenter les taux comme qu'ils ont fait. Just to let you know, also, there's different segments. So if they get their fees on a certain date, they pay a certain amount. And the longer they wait, it increases. They right now are telling themselves to wait so they can pay higher in order to get more money. I mean, it's getting to a point where, you know, it's a little ridiculous that the ministry doesn't even allow the increase if they themselves want the increase. So in order to serve our economic developments in all of our regions, je demanderais support pour ceci. Also at the very end pour envoyer une copie au ministre, puis so on and so forth. I'd also like to add that a copy of this be sent to all municipalities in Ontario so that just in case they have issues with their snowmobile clubs, they can feel free to increase the awareness. Fait que je ne sais pas si je vous redonne la parole, Monsieur le Président, pour gérer la réunion. C'est les points que je voulais faire. Merci.
Merci, Mayor Zant. Est-ce qu'il y a quelqu'un qui veut rajouter quelque chose? Monsieur Mayor Tarnowski.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I would propose an amendment to the resolution that council directs staff to circulate a resolution to all municipalities in Ontario, and I would ask to further also council request a formal written response from the ministry within 90 days of receipt of this resolution.
Thank you, Mayor Tarnowski.
I will second.
Mayor Zant.
I will second the amendment.
Second by Mr. Riopel.
J'ai une question, Monsieur le Président. Ceci dérive d'un des maires d'une municipalité, mais la Fédération des snowmobiles des motoneiges ne sera pas capable de nous envoyer une lettre formelle, comme quoi ils sont dans le pétrin, pour qu'on puisse avoir un genre de poids.
Merci, M. Riopel. M. Mario Zant, you wanna?
Merci, Monsieur le Président, Monsieur Riopel. Ils nous ont approchés, comme n'importe quelle autre organisation pourrait approcher tous les maires. Si c'est le but du Conseil d'avoir quelque chose d'eux, je pourrais retourner et le demander. Par contre, ça mettrait en délai encore une fois le fait, puis la neige va tomber bientôt. Alors, si vous voulez, si c'est le désir du Conseil d'obtenir cette lettre, je peux aller chercher. Par contre, ça repousse d'un autre mois.
Merci, M. Mayor Zant. M. Parisier.
Monsieur le Président, on a une bonne ligne de collaboration avec le président. Nous, de notre côté, on va envoyer un courriel aujourd'hui pour demander une lettre à l'administration.
Merci
Ça ne
beaucoup.
tardera pas le processus, ça va juste être ajouté à la lettre qu'on va envoyer.
D'accord. D'autres commentaires? Est-ce qu'on passe au vote maintenant? Allez-y, M. Tarnowski.
Je pense qu'on l'avait sur la table, l'amendement. Fait qu'on devrait voter sur l'amendement. Après ça, la résolution telle qu'amendée, c'est ça.
Monsieur le Président, vous votez sur l'amendement, puis si l'amendement passe, vous n'avez pas besoin de voter sur le...
OK. On vote sur l'amendement. Je suis en faveur. C'est adopté. On passe maintenant à l'item 8, rapport des départements des comités. 8.1, les finances. 8.1.1, F-008-2025, projet de construction de la résidence Prescott-Russell, achat d'urgence et révision budgétaire. Je vais demander, est-ce que vous voulez que je lise la résolution? Qu'il soit résolu que le Conseil approuve le rapport F-008-2025. J'ai besoin d'un proposeur, d'un appuyeur pour discuter. M. Tarnowski, M. Lefebvre, discussion, commentaire. Est-ce que... Allez-y, M. Tarnowski.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. I support this 100%, but I would like clarity on expected project completions and occupancy to be provided at our next meeting. So and I know that we don't have a crystal ball to have that, but could we have like a ballpark completion or occupancy, just because we are getting questions around that. So I would propose an amendment that direct administration to provide updated timeline for expected project completion and anticipated occupancy for the residents. Be included for next meeting.
Thank you, Mayor Tarnowski. You're proposing an amendment, Madame Parisi.
Mr. Warden, members of council, Mr. Tarnowski, maybe just to simplify today's meeting, I assure you we're going to discuss this next week. It's part of my presentation, so we will discuss this and clarify this. I take note of what your comment, but just for simplicity, I think we maintain I would recommend we maintain the recommendation as is, and I promise you we will discuss this.
Allez-y, Monsieur Tarnowski.
Considering I have a public promise, I'm okay with that. Thank you.
Autre question, autre commentaire, Monsieur Brière.
I'd also like to see I guess, the history and the progression of the financials. What was the original budget? When did it get approved? When did we increase it? All those things, because I wasn't here when this project was conceived, and I'm questioning what was the original budget, where we are now, and where we're headed. I don't know that information. I think that could be something that's either worth discussing or I need to know. Because when I go through this, I have a lot of numbers, but I don't know, c'est quoi le point du départ and where we're going to end. And then kind of what's in the middle there and what are some of the causes, because I myself, I'm getting a lot of questions now. And I wouldn't say pressure, but there is pressure that's mounting because people are in need of these beds and people are knocking on doors and they're looking for spaces to put their parents. And so this is becoming part of it's a much bigger deal than it was 8-10 months ago as far as my sphere of acknowledgement. So I think we just need to know at quel point de départ and where we're headed and how, all that kind of stuff.
Merci, Mayor Brière. Madame Parisi.
Mr. Warden, Mr. Brière, just in the spirit of clarity, the forecasted costs in my report of 1.3 bring us to the total approved budget of 93 million, which is the current budget right now. We did start at 89 in the past. I don't know the perfect timeline, but we started at 89. It got approved at 93. We're within that approved capital budget right now. The figures are as of August 31st. We've got 1.3 mil left to spend to respect that budget. But we also have a contingency that's factored in our debenture that I've noted in our report and that I've also noted in January when we secured that loan, because with IO, once you locked in, you can't adjust it. And we haven't really touched that contingency yet. It's still quite there for us to protect us with any unforeseen costs that we may see in the future. But I hope this answers your question. I may clarify further during the budget presentation, but that's where we're at.
So just to clarify, the original budget was 89 million. So if it wasn't for all I'll say the ups and downs that we've gone through, we would have been way under budget. Is that what you're saying? Because
Mr. Warden, yeah, potentially, yeah, of course. Like we've seen, but it's good news, I would say, honestly, because considering the delays and like the labor strikes and all of that on the construction site, we're still within the overall budget, which is good. And also, to be honest, the timing of our RFP when we issued this was good as well because it was pre-COVID. So the costs weren't inflated as we're seeing our partners like cars, for example, being quite interesting. It peaks in cost for that. So all of that played in our favor, I guess, but yeah.
Okay, thank you.
That answers your question? Yeah? Monsieur Parisien, no? All good. On va passer au vote. Il n'y a pas d'autres questions? En faveur? C'est adopté. On passe maintenant à l'item 8.2, l'administration. 8.2.1. Je vais vous lire la résolution. Qu'il soit résolu qu'aucune demande de délégation municipale ne soit soumise dans le cadre de la conférence Roma 2026 au nom des comtés unis de Prescott-Russell. J'ai besoin d'un appuyeur, un proposeur. Un proposeur, un appuyeur. Madame Lajoie, Monsieur Tarnowski. Questions, commentaires? Allez-y, monsieur. Allez-y, Monsieur Tarnowski.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. I'm wondering if there is an opportunity for delegation. There are 2 points that I think would have some value, but just again for discussion at this stage. But anything to further support regional infrastructure shortfall, I think, is still a major issue for all our municipalities. So possibly something from counties for delegation in that sense to support more funding. And the other aspect that I would see as some value coming from counties is promoting service delivery models that really reflect our rural realities, i.e. the per unit cost that we have to face in smaller municipalities, for example, long-term care or paramedicine. And I think the value here is for our municipalities or the counties to not bear an unequal share of that burden compared to bigger cities and so on. So I think those are two potential opportunities for delegation. So I would just kind of open that for discussion, see if anyone's interested in that.
Thank you, Mr. Tarnowski. Monsieur Parisien.
Mr. Warden, Mr. Tarnowski, not that I don't want counties to be doing a delegation on infrastructure, but I can tell you that your Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus is always making multi-minister delegation requests for Roma. We were actually in Ottawa yesterday with your warden as part of our parliamentary advocacy day, where infrastructure is at the forefront. The OWC represents all 103 municipalities. So if that's something you want to do, that's fine, but I'm just letting you know that the caucus has got this under their belt, and we can provide you with all of the information that's been going out lately. I'm sure Monsieur Bertillon provides the updates, the newsletters, and the whatnot, but that's for your information. It's being done at the county level. If that's not satisfactory and you want to have one done at the county level, we'll ask when that's fine.
Thank you, Monsieur Parisien. Does that answer your question? Go ahead, Mr. Tarnowski.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. I'm comfortable with that, assuming the table here is comfortable with that. And in terms of the service delivery, the other point that I made, any insight on that? In terms of the rural realities for us when we're dealing with long-term care, when we're dealing with, fire, when we're dealing all those aspects in terms of we rely on funding those services at a much smaller scale and at a much higher price for us. So the counties, at the end of the day, we're all kind of paying for that. So is there any value in pushing a delegation around some more parity in terms of funding for that, or support if you want?
Mr. Warden, Mr. Tarnowski, good point. Again, the caucus is as part of our presentation yesterday on Parliament Hill, the one thing that we are telling our federal partners, and our provincial partners know this as well, is that in small municipalities like ours, where it's mostly rural, is that, we're like businesses and we're not allowed to to budget for deficits. And whatever's missing from our revenue base goes directly on our ratepayers. And the point I was making when we met with one of the MPs yesterday was that, in fact, in speaking about long-term care, we've essentially paid for half of the construction, mostly all on our ratepayers, and we're responsible for doing that up front. But at the end of the day, we're going to recoup parts of these monies over the next 25 years, and more so is that Ontario's in a unique situation whereby we're obligated to operate and maintain long-term care facilities, and Ontario is probably the only province in Canada that has to do so. And as part of the Eastern Ontario Warden Caucus catchment area, that's 19 long-term care facilities that we're maintaining, and that's all off the back of our ratepayers. And if there's no funding that's coming to us as part of this, it's going to make our lives that much more difficult. When you talk about service delivery review and fire is not something we're addressing. So if there's something you want to bring up to speed with respect to fire as part of making a delegation, we can look at that. So if it's council's wish, the deadline is November the 18th. So unless you give us direction today, we're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place. That's not to say we can't make the motion next week, but it's mostly for budget. So I would recommend, if we do need a direction from council and time to prepare it, to send that in, that you do so today, and we'll look at how we can build that into a request for delegation.
Thank you, Mr. Parisien. Mr. Tarnowski?
I'm comfortable, Monsieur Parisien, with your Eastern Wardens Caucus aspect to it. I'm comfortable at this stage, just throwing that out for any Someone else that wanted.
And just to close this off, I'll make sure that the material that was provided to us to go to Parliament Hill for our advocacy day yesterday is provided to you as a complimentary information so you can see what the caucus is. And perhaps what I'm going to start doing each month is maybe just a blurb on what the EOWC has been doing, because I expect that it's going out, that you're seeing this. I'll just do a little blurb on what we're doing. Maybe it's going to bring you some comfort in what we're addressing globally on behalf of all our municipalities.
Thank you, Mr. Parisien. Mayor Zant and then Mayor Lajoie.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. I understand the point of the CAO. I also understand the point of my colleague, my left. The Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus does have a bigger voice to sit and discuss these things with, in this case was the federal government. And if they do have a delegation, which I don't know if they will have a delegation, so we're banking on assumptions on whether they will have a delegation at Roma. I don't know. But what I would like to see is still have a delegation at the UCPR. We just adopted in June our asset management plan, which has a $1.2 billion hole in it. I would love to have a chance to sit there and talk to them as this body and be able to talk, if all of the mayors are there, about the financial challenges that we're actually all facing. And it is not because we're not raising taxes. We're raising taxes at a staggering rate just to try to keep our noses above water. So I would love to be able to, and I understand the CAO's point, I would like to ask for a delegation regarding infrastructure financing because we are in that pickle right now, and I'd like a chance to talk about it as the UCPR and not as just as the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus.
Thank you, Mayor Zant. Mayor Lajoie, and then Mr. Brière.
Thank you, Warden. I'm kind of wondering what my colleagues think and staff regarding the delegation we had this morning. Is there room for a delegation there, requesting that the province help support the transition to this dispatch system and clarify that it's a French language emergency service and ask for regional funding to help with the tech upgrades, the staffing transition, capital costs, etc., and frame it within a French language emergency service protection kind of situation, and to ensure fair cost sharing and equitable access across small, rural, and bilingual communities.
Merci.
Or if it's too early to do that without accepting it within our budget.
Merci, Mayor Lajoie. Mayor Brière.
Mayor Lajoie kind of stole my thunder a little bit there. I was going to say maybe that could be with the affairs, le ministère de francophonie, qu'on fait en sorte que notre dispatch peut tomber en dessous de ça. Ce serait important qu'il au moins ça soit sur le radar. And the other one that, from a personal standpoint, the nation also from exits on the 417 in Limoges. The traffic situation is becoming dangerous now. So I would like for our staff, when I say our staff here, coupled with my staff at the nation, to kind of try to put that project on the radar for the province as problem's not going away, it's just going to get worse. So based on conversations with Mr. Sarrazin, he was not even aware of it, so I think we need to put that on the radar to start pushing that going forward. So I'm not sure how we want to go about this, but we need to work in concert from our municipality with yours, because it is a county road. We just need some direction.
Mr. Warden?
Thank you, Mr. Brière.
Mr. Warden?
Go ahead.
Mr. Warden, through you to Mr. Brière, I spoke with your CEO yesterday regarding the Limoges entrance or Limoges access. I think we should maybe discuss this after the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Bouchard. Madame Lajoie, you want to speak?
Yeah, I'll just finish what I was, so regarding the delegation, since, it is supported, So I would like to request operational funding for the Hawkesbury Fire Dispatch Center as Ontario's only fully francophone bilingual fire dispatch. And I want them to recognize it as a financial asset, help fund the staffing increases and the training, the capital funding, and to recognize it as a regional, perhaps a provincial fire dispatch hub. So perhaps they could support us further with that. And the second delegation, I have three. The second delegation is regarding childcare within our region, to request increased base funding for us, and to support workforce recruitment and retention through wage enhancements, better benefits, and to help stabilize the $10 child a day childcare transition, and to fund expansion in underserved areas within rural areas, especially for infant and toddler spaces, and to protect and expand francophone bilingual childcare within our region because it is a requirement, and to help improve financial planning tools and flexibility.
Merci, Mayor Briere.
And then I have my third.
Anybody else want to add?
And then my third one.
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, was, and again, this could be open for discussion here. As you know, Castleman's trying to undergo a connection to Clarence-Rockland water to connect to the Ottawa River, and I'm wondering if my colleagues here would feel it'd be appropriate to frame this within a regional scope and help support our efforts through advocacy.
Thank you, Mayor Briere. Anybody else? Monsieur Lefebvre?
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Juste ajouter essentiellement aux commentaires qui étaient faits concernant la question de répartition pour le centre de dispatch, si on peut dire. It's the issue of the day, basically. You need to support and have a delegation. We've already had a delegation, as you know, town of Hawkesbury with the Minister Solicitor General. He is aware. It would be nice to have also the counties basically behind this, since we are all paying towards the cost of dispatching. I just want to reiterate the comments that were made, since this is an actual pressing matter. Thank you.
Mayor Zant?
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Il y a certains commentaires qui ont été faits. Je ne sais pas si c'est vraiment, devrait être une délégation des Comtés unis ou délégation des municipalités. Concernant l'eau pour Castleman, je pense que ça serait peut-être Castleman qui devrait appliquer. L'Estate Clarence-Rockland serait très fier d'assister à cette rencontre pour offrir quelque chose, mais the water issue in Castleman is not necessarily what I would consider a county thing. I understand we're moving into that regional thing, but we're not there yet. But I don't know if that's a county delegation versus a Castleman delegation that Clarence-Rockland could assist. If that's the case. But I do agree on adding the fire dispatch, and I'll reiterate the infrastructure funding for me, or Mr. Tarnowski.
So Mr. Warden,
Go ahead.
for clarity, we request a formal motion for each item requesting a delegation. And to clarify the point of the counties has not really gotten into delegations where two municipalities were jointly engaged in a project that just takes away from our own asks. So it's kind of tough. And if we moved towards that direction, then it's very hard to say no to others when they want support from the counties. We're always available to show up at your delegations if you need oral support. But in essence, that's it. And we've got a number of items on the table right now, but I'm not sure we can get all of those. I'm not sure how to wrap my hands. So I'm thinking about the infrastructure is one of them. So I'm going to say this one. I'm going to say the fire dispatch. We would have to ask assistance from Mr. Wilson to go through that. Actually, probably would be our spokesperson. But the childcare piece, and maybe Madame Miette wants to clarify this, but in essence, those are the three ones that we've got on the table right now. So, Madame Miette, would you like to comment on the, is there another one missing? Okay.
I just want a clarification you had. So the first one was infrastructure, like we discussed?
The fire
Childcare
dispatch
Fire
and the
dis-
childcare.
and childcare. Okay.
But I'm not understanding the childcare, so I'd like Madame Miette maybe to, is that a valid point or?
Go ahead, madame.
Vous étiez
Madame
pour aller
Miette.
dire Madame Éveillé, là, hein? Monsieur le Président, membre du Conseil, Monsieur Parisien, j'avoue que au niveau de la petite enfance, c'est toujours, on rencontre toujours des défis. Toutefois, je n'étais pas nécessairement au courant de la demande de délégation de Mme Lajoie, donc j'aimerais peut-être discuter avec elle avant de confirmer quoi que ce soit, si c'est possible.
Merci, Madame Billette.
So there's
D'autres
always a-
commentaires, d'autres?
Il y
Allez-y.
a toujours la possibilité de le rajouter à la prochaine réunion. Donc, on aurait à ce point-ci l'infrastructure puis le fire dispatch, puis là, j'aimerais ça que le Conseil nous donne une résolution pour ces deux sujets-là pour qu'on puisse commencer à préparer.
D'accord, on va aller à la résolution. L'amendement de résolution. Go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to frame my, the regional reason for the Clarence-Rockland-Castleman water connection. And I completely understand the decision here, but I just want to explain that securing water in Castleman is also supporting our the people who surround us. I mean, those are connections that they could connect to within the more rural areas around the borders of Castleman, and also it will support economic development for the whole region. So it is, in my perspective, a regional enhancement. And, you know, if we're putting billions of dollars into widening the 17 in Rockland, it's kind of the same thing. We're supporting one another's municipalities so that we could grow the region. So I just wanted to people to understand my.
Thank you, Mayor Lajoie. Je vais vous lire, je vais demander à mon collègue de lire la prochaine résolution, l'amendement à la résolution.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Donc, be it resolved that the following municipal delegation request for the 2026 Roma Conference be submitted on behalf of the United Counties of Prescott-Russell, infrastructure, financing, fire dispatch.
Proposeur, M. Tarnowski. Marie-Ozanne. Questions, commentaires? Il n'y en a pas d'autres? Fait qu'on passe au vote. En faveur? C'est adopté. On passe maintenant à la période 9, période de questions au chef de département. Est-ce qu'il y en a qui ont des questions pour les chefs de département? Monsieur Brière.
Moi, ma question, c'est concernant le rapport qu'on a eu sur le review du service delivery. J'aimerais juste savoir où est-ce qu'on est rendu avec ça, parce que le rapport a été déposé, puis c'est comme une tablette. I just would like to know where we are with that, and if what's some of the progress and how we can push this forward going ahead. Because I think at the lower tier level, we're all anxiously looking forward to see how that's going to pan out, because again, we have some major financial decisions going forward, and we just want to know where we're headed at this level in order forward.
Mr. Parisien?
Yeah, Mr. Warden, Mr. Bedier, that's a good question. So we had a follow-up meeting with our consultant last week with all your CAOs regarding where we're going with this. And the consultant is finalizing the reimagined fire service document, the one that was presented to you late spring or mid-spring, to have a finalized document, possibly before November. But because we're in budgets and whatnot, I thought it may be better to present that at the January meeting so that we would segregate those both issues. But if you want to have this beforehand, I'll just ask her to be to submit this. December is not going to be possible unless we have a special meeting on this. So I've asked her to try to get that done ASAP. But the goal for me, and I told all your CAOs that I was likely going to present this in January. unless I get a different feel from you, that's where I'd be going. And we'd start off with the reimagined fire service, because if council, I'll be blunt, if council's not willing to move ahead with some of these recommendations on this specific item, I just find it's going to be hard to continue with all other possible options if we can't agree on this one. So I'm being transparent. This is where I feel we're going.
Merci, M. Parisien. M. Tarnowski.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Merci, Monsieur Parisien. I think it's important, we're all going through our budgeting process, and certainly there is a lot of pressure at my municipality in terms of costs, increasing costs and so on. So this information coming up is really important for us. I would like to make sure that that we have a really good understanding of the opportunities. I'm not comfortable, and I'll say transparently, I'm not comfortable with maybe subbing out our service or anything like that. But I would like to see what can we do as a region in terms of optimizing it. And I'm looking at our ambulance service that's doing so well right now in terms of how it's managed. I'd like to see if we could look, in that report, that we can address that. And I know these are very difficult discussions, uncomfortable discussions, but we owe it to our ratepayers to make sure that we are as efficient as possible while still maintaining, obviously, all the safety requirements and so on. So I need to know that what's going to be presented is a fulsome look by an outside party to really look at the opportunities that are available to us. Ideally, I would love to see it around before we commit to our budget, but I'm comfortable. I prefer to wait till January, but have something wholesome that we can take back and really look at how we can improve or optimize, certainly, our services that way. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mayor Tarnowski. Monsieur Riopel.
Merci, M. le Président. Je suis du même avis du maire Tarnowski. Il faudra attendre le rapport aussi. On a eu un méchant document, donc passer à travers ce petit rapport-là, ça peut-être nous éclaircirait un petit peu sur le moral de ce qui nous avait été présenté. Donc, janvier, ça sera peut-être un peu proche, parce qu'on va peut-être passer à Roma, puis il va y avoir beaucoup de discussions qui vont être faites, peut-être un manque de temps d'être capable de lire tous nos rapports, mais janvier, c'est bon.
Merci, M. Riopel. Il y en a qui veulent rajouter des questions sur les chefs de département? Non? Passons maintenant au numéro 10, qui est le règlement. Qu'il soit résolu que le règlement suivant soit adopté par le Conseil des comtés unis de Prescott-Russell après ces trois lectures. 2025-41 pour remplacer l'annexe A du règlement 2010-50 étant un règlement visant à réglementer et à réagir la présence, l'utilisation et l'opération des véhicules tout-terrain et des motoneiges dans la forêt La Rose. 2025-42 pour adopter une politique sur les réserves et les fonds de réserve. 2025-43 pour modifier le règlement 2024-19 étant un règlement visant à réglementer la circulation et le stationnement sur les routes relevant de la juridiction de la Corporation des comtés unis de Prescott-Russell et 2025-44 pour autoriser la conclusion d'une quatrième entente de prolongation de la modification du bail avec Sa Majesté le Roi du chef de l'Ontario, représenté par le ministre de l'Infrastructure pour l'immeuble situé au 59 rue Court, dans le village de Lornial, dans la province de l'Ontario. J'ai besoin d'un proposeur et un appuyeur. M. Tarnowski, M. Brière, en première lecture, deuxième lecture, troisième lecture, c'est d'adopter. Huis clos, on n'en a pas. Le règlement de ratification 2025-45, qu'il soit résolu que le Conseil adopte le règlement 2025-45 afin de ratifier toutes les mesures et toutes les recommandations prises au rapport, aux résolutions et au règlement de la réunion ordinaire du Conseil du 22 octobre 2025 après ces trois lectures. Proposeur appuyeur. M. Lefebvre, M. Zant. Questions, commentaires? Non. En première lecture? Deuxième lecture? Troisième lecture, c'est d'adopter. Les annonces? Est-ce qu'il y en a qui ont des annonces? Moi, j'aimerais juste souligner le fait que M. Romain Lalonde, qui est décédé, sa femme était un employé de la résidence auparavant. Fait que je veux juste vous dire que malgré ses 62 ans, il est mort du cancer. Fait que tout le monde peut aller le 24, je pense, novembre, le matin, chez La Mort et Fils. Fait que je voulais vous annoncer ça. On passe maintenant à l'agjournement, qui est 11h20. Je déclare la réunion close.